1 second. I'm moving. This button. Okay, it'll be like TEDx. I get to start over again. All right, I'm calling to order at 6:33, calling to order the October 6th regular monthly meeting of the EDC. The additions or deletions to the agenda. Let me just go over the agenda. We're going to be talking about the loan fund, just to set some guiding, to give some direction to the people that are working on it. A discussion of the process to handle community grants. Hey, Joe, welcome. And a discussion of the process to handle the larger grants that we want to do in our priority areas. The new business, we have 3 new applicants, which is fantastic, for the rental incentive program, and updates from, I think, most of the working groups. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Am I repeating it? Yeah. All right, no, hearing none. This is a little unusual. I can't remember whether we approved the minutes last time from July and August. The minutes are all posted in the website, as well as for our last meeting for September. So just in case we didn't approve them, I would like to ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes, July 21st, August 4th, September 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Patrick, second. Any discussion? No, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any EDC members opposed? No, okay. Sorry, so we're just going to shift around the discussion of the rental incentive program, and then the housing, and then one of the working groups, which is housing. There's some other working groups that I told you to come at the end, because I thought that was when it was going to be scheduled. So we'll start with the rental incentive program. And Jill, if you want to combine that with any other information about the housing working group, that would be fine. But let me give you permission to share your screen. Okay, go ahead.
And will you stop sharing yours?
Oh, yes, right.
Okay. Okay, so we're feeling quite successful in the housing working group. We have 2 of the 2 applications for the workforce rental ADU program are moving forward. Tisha Bush will break ground in the next 2 weeks on the foundation. So she's building a garage with the ADU above it. And then Sean and Anna are waiting on contractors' final quotes. They have minimal work to do, but it'll probably, it'll probably expand. So those 2 are going ahead, and they're both working to get the award from the state grant as well. So our award and the state grant are working in unison for those two people. We've had a 3rd application, and so we'll be able to go view that and work with that applicant in the next month. So that would take us to, if she was approved, that would be the program pilot done. We set out with 3 applications and we'll use them all. So that's exciting. And then what we're bringing you tonight are 3 recommendations for the rental incentive program, and we can go through them one by one. Do you want to approve them together or separately?
You go through them one by one, but I'm guessing we can approve them separately, unless there are some certain questions that seem to come up for some and not others.
Okay. All right. So here's the first one. The applicant is Hannah Abrams. The house is on South Road, 1906 South Road. It's a 3-bedroom single family home, and she's applying for a 2-year $7,000 incentive. She meets all the eligibility requirements, and her permit for, the fire inspection permit for rentals is in process. Trina's met her, and once they get that permit sorted out, they're all ready to go. So she's already done the meeting with Jay Moody from the state, who's checking on all of the fire and safety things. And there are 3 items she just needs to replace by November the 1st to be compliant with that. There's more details on this application if you want all of the details, but I thought you might like to see photos, and that seems pretty clean and simple. She hasn't rented this before. This would be a new property into the marketplace. Any questions?
Great.
Jill, just remind us of the process for checking to make sure that, because this is a multi-year, the 7,000 is for 2 years, right? It's if they do 2 years, it's less if they do 1 year.
Yes.
Just remind us of the process for, there is some kind of process to checking up on the interim or at the end or something like that.
Yes, so right at the beginning, so we give first of all, we give the grant in 2 goes. So she has to present a lease, and in the lease, it has to have the conditions of employment of one of the occupants of the household. And we can verify that. We ask for permission to verify that. And then we will keep in touch should that tenant have to leave or change for any reason. And then when she writes a lease for the 2nd year, we'll be working with her again. We have a recommended lease for her to use if she'd like to use that. So we will work through with her on finding the tenant if she wants help and screening the tenant. We won't choose the tenant for her.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Any other questions? No, okay, keep going.
Okay, second one. The second one, the applicant is Maureen O'Leary. The house is on 7 River Street. It's a duplex, 2-bedroom duplex. She's applying again for the 2-year $7,000 incentive grant. We've made the site visit, met the owner. She meets all the eligibility requirements. She did used to rent this as a monthly rental and wants to move now to a long-term rental in our program. She's completed the state fire safety inspection and she's looking to rent it out on November the 15th.
I got one quick question, Joe. This is 2-bedroom. Is 7,000 the right number? Or
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Let me check.
I can't remember the splits.
Let me check. Because it's going to apply. Let me run through the next one and then I'll check the details, okay?
I think those were the same. It was that the amount they could rent was different, whether it was
Right.
1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or 3, but the amount was the same.
Right.
I
It's
believe.
2+, isn't it? 2+ is the same amount.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
2. You're right. Because it was studio, 1 bedroom, and then 2+.
Right.
That's-
Okay.
Right. Just want to make
All
sure.
right. So the third property, the applicant is Sarah Callender. The house is on 608 East Woodstock Road. So just as you're driving into the village, she's in the town on that road coming in. It's a single family home, 3-bedroom. And again, she's applying for a 2-year $7,000 incentive grant. We've made a site visit, met the owner. She meets all the eligibility requirements. This house was Meg's. I can't remember Meg's last name.
Brazil, right?
Pardon?
Brazil?
Yes, Meg Brazil's house. So she is still going through all of the probate stages, but she is both the executor and the sole inheritant and has provided paperwork to show that she is the sole owner. She's met with David Green for the pre-state inspection, and she's got some electrical work to do. She's looking to rent it by November the 1st.
Okay, great. Any questions?
No, this is great. This is very exciting that you got 3 people.
Can we move to vote on it all as a package, John?
Yeah,
Great.
Should I stop sharing?
yeah.
Okay.
Any questions? No?
Yeah, I was just wondering, the goal here is to take properties out of the month-to-month type of thing to long-term.
Yes.
Is that being achieved with these 3 properties?
So we extended the program a little bit to also include properties that aren't currently on the rental market, to include them. Came from the belief that we believe there are several properties that were not in the rental market that could be in the rental market, and then this directs them into long-term rental. So one of the properties was being rented month to month. The other 2 would be new rentals. So we're giving the incentive so they're not turning into short-term rentals.
And just to clarify, when you say we changed it, that was part of our public discussion when we approved it. It wasn't
Yes.
That wasn't something that you've done behind the scenes. It was.
No, when we originally started talking about this all that time ago, we thought it was just short-term rentals, and then we realized there's an opportunity beyond that.
Yeah. Larry, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Any?
No, you didn't.
Does that answer you?
Yes.
Can you give us a sense of the pipeline? You said there's a third ADU person. What do you think? I mean, are you serving basically every person who's applying? What's the pipeline?
Yes, so far we've brought to you every person who's applied. We have one person who's interested, but the situation is complex and they're not really ready to move. So we're working with the people, or we're giving the grants to the people who can turn on these rentals or turn on the process of moving to the ADU immediately, and not tying up the money with people who are still, well, if this and then that, because we think we only come to you in January and ask for more money for those people.
Right. And we basically have the capacity, if everyone asks for the 7,000, which that seems to be a trend, we have 35, we have 35,000 for the rental incentive?
Right, so we'd have room for one more, wouldn't we? Maybe one or two more, depending whether they came on a 2-year or a 1 year.
Yeah, well, it should be 2-year. If
Yeah.
we have 35,000, although I think we spent a little bit on legal or something like that.
We've had some legal expenses to get all of the agreements tied
Right.
up,
And then
but we're finished with that work.
Yeah. Well, just a brief comment. I mean, it's obvious, but when you started by saying you're feeling pretty good, this far exceeds my own sense of what might happen. The idea that, and actually, I think it actually creates a problem if we decide not to fund additionally, which I think we can leave that, because then we have a 1-year funding of a housing advisor with no funds to distribute. Never occurred to me we could have that problem. I suppose it's a good problem to have. So anyway, this is, I think, fantastic outcome. We basically, I think, brought 5 units of workforce housing onto the market.
Yes.
At an average cost of about, $800 or $8,500 a unit, which is, I think, a fantastic outcome. And it suggests that if the pipeline remains, active, it seems to me but we can decide that when the time comes.
Yes, and we haven't, so we've done our marketing so far has really been in listserv. We could get more active than that. We've chosen not to, as we get these first ones on.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Anything else from the housing working group, or is this really focused on these 2 programs, right?
We focused on these 2 programs and getting them sorted out. We really haven't been able to make much progress with the support stuff that we wanted to do. So that will be our next look. And then also trying to build the picture of what next year might look like. We've done a little bit of research into that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
So John, I'll make a motion that we approve these 3.
Oh, sorry, I forgot we didn't do that. Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Is there a second?
Second.
Todd, second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No? Okay, congratulations. That's great.
Great
Great
work.
job.
Great work.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to go back now to the old business, and then we'll come back with the remaining working group updates at the end. Although I do think, Jill, you're having made the point, and just having a couple of minutes to reflect on it, I do think in the future, we might actually switch around the working group updates, have that be in the beginning. It might act as a governor on how much time we spend on the more strategic, the more open-ended discussions, which might be a good thing.
Thank you. That would be helpful to us.
Yeah. Okay. We're moving now to 5A, discussion of loan fund to support local businesses. As we go into it, I just wanted to show this picture, which really provides a picture of our current scope of work, or our priorities, what we're working on. And to me, this is a very robust, sustainable picture meaning that I could see us doing this for the next 5 years. Not that any of these things could be stricken and added to or taken down, taken away. But this seems to me to be a good model. And I think today's meeting is going to demonstrate that, because we're going to hear from at least 3 of the working groups on significant progress that they're making, as well as some of the initiatives. So we have the 5 working groups, we've agreed on that, and the 5 priorities, and we've established working groups in each of those cases. And we have 2 initiatives, the community grants, I'm calling that the smaller grant program, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and the grant writing support, which is the pilot program with a grant support writer, Allison Caffrey. And what we're talking about now is whether or not to add a 3rd, and I think potentially final initiative to this scope of our work, which is a loan fund for businesses. And Larry, I'm gonna ask you to summarize in a minute. Let me just show quickly the slides. I'm not even gonna, and then ask you to summarize some of this information since you did most of the work. Last time we talked about Bradford and used it as an example. The mission of the Bradford Revolving Loan Fund is to make loans to Bradford-based businesses that have the potential to increase employment within the town, to grow those businesses, and to improve the general welfare using generally accepted principles of sound banking. Sounds, my vote would be, that's exactly what, if we had a loan fund, that's exactly what our mission should be. Larry and Joe and I have been investigating this. And when I say Larry and Joe and I mean Larry. Yes. Right? Joe and I have been asking questions and Larry has been answering them. And Larry has both spoken to Bradford and also spoken to an attorney. And what we'd like to do tonight is we have identified the situation and come up with a model that we think is replicable here in Woodstock. Before we start to actually develop the detailed process, meaning the application forms and the criteria, I think Larry, Joe, and I would like to get general feedback from the EDC on a very simple question, which is, basically these questions. Assuming we can resolve whatever concerns are raised, do we want to try to create a loan fund or not? And what are the major concerns? I think we don't want to kind of dive into the detailed work if basically at the end of it, people will say, well, this is perfect, perfectly constructed, but we don't really want to have a loan fund. So Larry, would you be comfortable sort of taking us through both this, which is your, summary of what's happening in Bradford, and also the legal advice we've gotten, and then we can get the feedback from the EDC. Is everyone okay with that? And Larry, are you okay with that?
Yeah. Fine. Yeah. I didn't know I was going to do that. Well, it seems to me, John, the key thing is there are two things. That Bradford is one of the places that has a loan fund. They were funded years ago by federal money, basically, and they've been doing this since I think 15, 20 years ago. And I had a long talk with a guy named Bill Moore, who's basically the equivalent of our EDC administrator. And John, you've this, I think, is that what I wrote? Because that looks like me. Yeah. That's a good summary of the successful way that they've been doing these loans. They are pretty much towards given to for-profit businesses. And I don't know if I can add much to what's written there. The main thing, the main charge I felt I was responsible for was to find out, first of all, if we could do it, whether we could actually have a loan fund. Is it legal for the an arm of the town government to give out loans? And if there was any constraint in terms of giving out loans to for-profit businesses versus nonprofit businesses, or businesses that are not aligned with the usual business of running a town. And Paul Gillies, who's a very well respected lawyer for municipalities and who was recommended to us by the select board, gave us a very thorough and positive, yes, we can do this. So there's a lot of questions that I have in my mind about it, how we would do it. I think what I was expecting or hoping for was a consensus or non-consensus that we want to do this, and then maybe have a group of people pursue. I'd be happy to continue to pursue the legal aspects of it. There's a lawyer that Bradford used. It'd be my suggestion. That person is very knowledgeable with this kind of a program, that we might talk to that person. That would be in terms of making sure that all the paperwork was right, that we have the right security, et cetera. But beyond that, I think there are some pretty big questions about, who are we giving loans to? Would we give those loans? Would we give a loan to somebody that we denied a grant to, or are they a different category? Are we somehow suggesting that we aren't giving grants to for-profit organizations? Is that implied in this? I don't know that it is. Touching on something Joe mentioned last meeting, you have to keep in mind that if we give out loans, we don't have that money for other purposes. So I think we want to be mindful of that aspect. So that's it. That's about it. I guess we're looking for a sense of the meeting or whatever, John, that we want to pursue this, I guess.
Yeah,
So we don't-
exactly, or not, right. Joe, go ahead.
Well, Larry, that's awesome. I mean, you're doing a great job with that, but I'm wondering if it would be beneficial for the other commissioners to know some other facts, like, the maximum amount loan, the default rate, who specifically would do the vetting of applicants. Those are kind of, I think, immediate questions I would have, and I did have when we first proposed this program. So maybe you can clarify those points for the rest of the commission.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we have made inroads on those. I think those are all things that.
Did we say something about the maximum amount would be like $40,000? Is that?
Yeah. There was one default. That's
right.
item 4 there. They had, out of all these years, they've only had one default, and it was for about $40,000.
And their loan size was 5 to 80,000. I don't think we hadn't had a discussion about a maximum. We could have one, but we don't.
Yeah.
John, are we trying to just decide whether we want to move forward and we don't need to talk details tonight, right?
We're not trying to design the program.
Right, we're not. That's not what I'm suggesting, Patrick. I'm just suggesting maybe a broader outlook of what is happening in Bradford. So there's some things you can think about.
Yeah.
Until we do decide.
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it is basically there. If we would just take another minute and let people read through it, but I think it is vetted by a private group
Yeah.
of people, mostly bankers.
Right, but they didn't know that. And
Yeah.
I thought maybe you
Right,
could point it out.
So, Deborah? Oh, and then Todd. Sorry, Todd, I didn't see your hand. Deborah first, then Todd. Go ahead.
I'm curious, I mean, again, we're not designing right now. It would feel appropriate to me that whatever this loan fund is would follow the similar criteria of the EDC at large, and that would be a good way of the vetting, is to say that it would still fall within what we're looking to create through the EDC, as far as the guidelines, who gets them. And I'm just curious that with the information that you got, Larry, which, by the way, this is really wonderful to see, that Bradford says it's a 5-person committee, mostly bankers, to review the app. But I'm just wondering, do you have, or can we look at what their criteria is?
Yes.
For how they vet?
Well, they have an extensive application set up on their website. And definitely a lot of that would be very useful to us. They don't have an EDC, so they don't have the ability to make grants. So I do think that well, we're getting into designing. I think we would need to have an answer to someone who asked us for, let's say, $50,000, and we say, no, we're not giving you a grant, but we're going to give you a loan. Why? You know, I think those are difficult questions in my head, and I think they just need we need to be able to point to something and say, this is why.
Right. I'm going to come back and try to answer. I do think we can answer that question, but let's just wait. Todd first, and then Michael.
Thanks. I don't want to come off the wrong way, but this all sounds great, but aren't we just talking about if spiritually we're okay with this becoming like a committee and the committee getting into all the questions we might have? So do we need to talk about all this tonight, or just say, yeah, I think we should explore more of it, because it just feels like this would be committee work that they would present to us in a organized manner at a future date. So if that's the sense, then I support this to going to committee and a working group to be formed to explore if necessary. I think it's great. If we have questions and we're going to do that tonight and talk about it for 3 hours, then I can write questions and do that too.
All right, let's assume it's the former, and let's see what. But yes, we're trying to do the former. I do think that if there are visceral things that would cause people to say, you know, it's very unlikely that I would approve this. That's kind of what I guess in your vote, then just incorporate that feeling. If you
Right.
think that there's not much you would do to approve it, then so forth.
May I, wait a minute, may I interject though? Todd, I don't think any of us would have a problem with if we do not want to tailor make this thing tonight. But if there are questions that you want to ask of me or of John, email us, and then we'll put it on the list, and those are the things we'll pursue as we further look into this issue.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into the details of it because that's not what we're here for tonight. But I definitely feel like we need to. I feel like we've been trying to work on this for the past 5 years, and so it'd be nice to actually get this going and available for people. I mean, that's all I have to say.
Okay. All right. Well, just to take a sense of, I mean, this is not so the vote, I suppose, is just a vote to, should we continue working on this? Is there anyone opposed? Is there anyone who feels like they're so uncertain of things that they don't think it's worth working on it until we have some debates? Or do they think that we can likely solve these problems and whatever your concerns are, and therefore let a group come back with a specific proposal that we think addresses the questions that were raised tonight and any other questions that the group has? Is there anyone who's opposed to that? Just hearing a sense of the group seems like we're all pretty supportive. It's okay to be opposed. We just want to kind of get it out on the table.
Is it possible to put a deadline on this? I mean, to say like, okay, yeah, we all support this, but can we say, okay, by our meeting in January, if that's when we have it, can we have this thing active? I mean, I don't know the intricacies of this, but it'd be nice to have a date.
I think
we haven't had, Michael, in your own words, that's been working on for 5 years. So, you know.
I think let's interpret Michael's comment as let's do that. He's supportive of doing this as quickly as possible. I happen to agree. I happen to think that that having a loan fund targeted towards businesses will actually help, and will help us significantly in sharpening the criteria we use for making grants. And that it will give us a very rational way to answer exactly the question that Larry and Deborah have basically posed, which is by what criteria would we give someone a grant? And I think Bradford has shown the way, and I think the group can come up with that fairly quickly. Bradford has also operationally shown the way if we're comfortable doing it the way they said, which is one, I think, very good way of doing it. So I think that it is possible, Michael, for us to move quickly. January, I think there's a benefit to, if we're not exactly in parallel with the community grant process, at least not being a year or 6 months off of it would benefit us, because it would allow us to communicate more clearly to all the constituents. If you look like X, then this is what you should apply for. And if you look like Y, then this is what you should apply for. That's my view. So, all right, no one has objected. So I'm going to take that as that we should put a serious effort into designing this and come back to the group with a proposal.
Yeah.
As soon as we can.
Yeah.
John, before, are you gonna move on? Because I want
Well, I
to.
was just gonna ask for volunteers, but go ahead, before I do that. Go ahead.
I think that hand in hand with this, we should engage an attorney to help us with the,
Yeah.
design it. And I don't think we have voted any money
Yeah.
for that.
No, we have.
No, we have funds, you have funds for it.
We have
Well,
five.
no, I think that was to determine whether it was legal or not.
Wait, sorry, Larry, we lost you there for a second. You thought that was for what? Oh, no.
$5,000 was for
Yeah.
legal advice.
Larry, we've lost you. We can't, can anyone else hear Larry?
No, I can't hear Larry.
Hold on a second, let me just mute off. Larry, say it again. All right, looks like maybe he can't hear us.
John, if I remember correctly, there was $5,000.
There is,
Yeah, it was.
and it was, if you can hear us, Larry, that 5,000, I believe, was for legal
Yes,
legal advice to help set this up, to do exactly what you're suggesting.
and to Michael's point, Michael, I haven't been on as long as you in the EDC as you have. But in my mind, this has only come up twice in the last two meetings, and it feels like we're moving forward quickly because of the Bradford example.
No,
So-
but sorry, Michael, you can go ahead and explain the history. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was back when Tom was the head of this committee. We were trying to get this done, and we're really literally talking 5 years ago. Joe will probably vouch for that one.
And,
I'm on board with you. Definitely move. We got to move it forward.
actually, I think it was 7 years ago with Tom and then 5 years ago with Charlie. So
That's right.
it's been happy. Yeah. So, okay, Larry, can you hear us? Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. Okay, did you want to try again to speak, or have you been permanently muted?
Oops.
No?
Yeah,
No,
no, yes, go ahead. We can barely hear you, but go ahead.
Oh, I don't know what's going on. I was saying that I thought the $5,000 was to determine whether the loan fund was legal or not. There were no constraints on it, that's fine.
No, I don't believe there were constraints on it. I think we can feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Right?
You
And we haven't gotten the bill from Paul Gillies yet, so how much can we spend on a lawyer?
To be honest, I think that, yeah, I think let's
I
deal.
wouldn't
If
be
we run
surprised
out
if
of,
we don't get a bill, right? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, but I would be surprised if we run out of legal money in order to create a program
Yeah.
which already exists and has been set up and has been operating for 20 years.
Yeah.
You don't know lawyers.
I suppose we can deal with this offline, but I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure we need one. I think we have a program that's already legal, but anyway.
Good one, Larry. That was a good one.
Was there anyone who would be interested in working on this? Larry is interested in it. I've been involved in it. I think, Joe, you mentioned that you might not want to continue, or you do want to continue.
He's the one that didn't want to.
Oh, Larry didn't want to continue. All
I
right.
said,
Well,
I do.
is there anyone else who is interested in joining this? And we have a couple of members who are missing tonight. All right, well, Michael, Michael actually looks like, I can't see his camera, but it looks like Michael stepped away for 1 second. But Larry, my suggestion, Larry and Joe, is that we give Michael, oh, Michael, you're back. Michael, would you be interested in working on this at least for the next couple of months? I know you've been an enthusiast of it.
I hate this kind of stuff.
What do you say?
He
He
hates
hates
this
this
kind
kind
of
of stuff.
stuff. You
I
just want
really hate it, and I'm not good at it.
Okay.
But you ask a lot of questions about it, Michael.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I think we will then soldier on.
I'm happy to criticize, though.
Right. And we will take that into account when
Yeah,
thinking
you
about
do
the
a very good job at that.
we'll take that into account when thinking about the deadline. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's move on here. Okay. The discussion of the process to handle community grants. So last time we had a discussion about one aspect of community grants, which was the amount of money that we wanted to allocate this year. I don't remember precisely whether we basically came to the conclusion that we wanted to allocate 100,000. Not everyone wasn't unanimous, but clear it was a meaningful majority. I put up these basic questions that I thought we should try to resolve today. we did talk about launching the process immediately after this meeting. That may or may not be possible depending on our answers to some of these questions, because I didn't have a chance to get any online platform revised or modified from last year, if any or is needed. I think, Todd, it would be very simple to get Sam to help just get the pages back online. The problem is I can't find the pages. They're there. I just couldn't get them up for this meeting. So I think we should assume that within a week, we could launch the process with an online approach, with exactly the same approach as last week, if we didn't want to make changes other than to change the year. So these are the questions that I would like to try to answer tonight. Do we want to require or request pre-applications as we did last year? If we have 100,000 to grant, do we want to set maximum grant sizes? I'm not advocating for or against these points. I'm just bringing up the questions. Do we want to stick with 100K allocation? I don't want to. I think we voted on it the last time, so I'm not trying to reopen that, but I'm just reminding us what we did. Do we want to have the same application and the same way of reviewing where we have, meetings where the people give a presentation for 20 minutes or whatever it is? Do we want to indicate that we have a preference for the 5 priority areas, but we're not limited to that as long as it's economic and community development? Do we want to provide any guidance for businesses that are considering applying? Do we want to tell people that there may be, that they're, we're working hard on a loan fund that that we're generally in support of. It isn't developed yet, but it will be soon. Or do we not want to provide any guidance? Or do we want to tell them that, we certainly will consider grants from businesses, but that there needs to be a clear public benefit, that just saying, if you give me this money, I will hire more people, or I will have more customers, I'll have a bigger business. I think this is the reason why I think we need a loan fund, because I think implicitly what we did last time was to say, if you don't have a clear, definable public benefit, that's more than just you're going to hire more people, you're going to grow your business, then we're not going to give you a grant, because many people are opposed to funding private businesses for that reason. As opposed to if someone came to us and said, we'd like to do our facade, which is a downtown rejuvenation priority, or said we would provide a public restroom in the East End, I think we would do it. So do we want to provide guidance for businesses to make it clear that if they do apply for a community grant, we're going to look for a benefit that is of this type of benefit that I've written up there, not just that a business is good for economic development and therefore give us money to do what we need to do. And what deadline what's the schedule, what's the calendar?
Okay.
Yeah, so these are the questions I'd just like to discuss. I know there's a lot of them. Some of them are fairly simple. Feel free to comment on whichever ones, and then I'll kind of go back at the end and see if we have a consensus on all these. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah. There are 2 things I'd like to pick on. One, where we talked about, what's the second from the bottom? Do we want to provide guidance? I'm wondering, and it's just a question, I'm wondering if we're going to get into the area of deciding what we think is best for the town. And maybe we should be, but should we be doing that? That's the way I should ask it. Should we be doing that? Should we be putting ourselves in a position of making judgment calls about what would be good for the town and what would not be? Somebody want to come in and put a tattoo parlor in or something like that, and they need money to do it. I mean, I'm using that, probably a bad example, but I'm coming.
Are there businesses we wouldn't support because of the nature of the business?
Maybe.
That's your question.
In our opinion, doesn't really fit, what Woodstock is about, or what we think Woodstock is about. And are we getting into that realm? That's one question. The second is, and I don't know if this is the right place to, but I remember way back when we first, when Michael and Deborah, I think it was Michael and Todd, and maybe, it was Todd and Deborah who came up with the pre-app and all that great stuff. I mean, it was really beneficial. I think it did well, but there was discussion back then about have we nailed down really and really identify what the mission of the EDC is, So that could be looked at by possible applicants, and before they even think about applying for something, do they meet what we consider as the mission of the EDC?
Right. On that point, I just want to be clear. I think we have just spent 6 months and said that the mission of the EDC for now
Yeah,
is to do 5 things.
5 things, exactly. right.
And what we've also said until now, that we have a chance to change it. This is sort of the last
Sure.
times we can
Sure.
do it. Is that we are not prepared to reject everything else. And therefore,
Yeah.
those are the 5 things that are our mission. But this year, at least, we will allocate $100,000 to things that support either of those things or something else, as long as that something else is economic and community development. And so if it,
Okay.
yeah, so that,
Well, the reason I asked that question, because, there were so many applicants last year, which is good, which is great. But I think some of us about the question, would there be as many if they looked at these 5 categories that we now have and say, well, what's the point? I don't feel, I don't fit into any of this stuff. So who's that?
Todd, my Zoom is up. Okay, he'll that will help. Okay, thanks, Todd. No, I think Larry's microphone is back. All right, so I think the answer to that question up until now, we can change it, is the community grant program is not limited to the 5 priorities. It is limited to economic by law, or to economic and community development.
Right.
But it's not limited to the 5 priorities.
Okay.
Unless again, I'm reflecting what I think we've agreed to, but other comments about this process, Todd. Oh, sorry, and then Deborah. I didn't see Deborah's hand. Todd first, and then Deborah. Go ahead.
I just wonder, I think this debate's good tonight, but can we like do this as homework too and come back and like just decide as a group in the next meeting what exactly we're gonna do? Can we have a homework assignment on it, or we're just gonna sort of go through it all? I'm just sick. It's hard for me to think straight. It's just like, let's just make, I'm just wondering if we're gonna go live soon. I suggest that no matter what, we after our next meeting, we go live shortly thereafter, but we like finalize this stuff then if possible.
If we do that, I think the only reason I'm pushing for it is from a time frame. If we wanted to push the annual funding meeting to February, let's just say, which I don't think is bad. It's soon earlier than we've done it in the past, also 1 month later. We could do it in early February. I think we would have enough time if we announced it next month.
When did we open the app last year?
Well, we probably opened it last year in September, but this year we're in late September, I think, and we had the meeting. No, but we had the meeting in March, so I think it was later than this. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't do it yet, but I'm just
but I think we wanted to. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but we'd like to do it again before March. If we did it in March, we have more than enough time to do it.
I agree. I agree. I just think it's a lot to process, and I'm just sick, so that's all I'm saying.
Okay, all right. Let's just keep going for a few minutes anyway. Deborah and then Patrick.
Yeah, I missed the last meeting. It's the first one I missed, and I am very sorry, guys. It was just crazy time at that moment. So I want to understand what you're saying about number 3, that there's $100K that you agreed would go to the community grants, which means they are community grants that are smaller in nature outside of the 5 working groups. And the rest of the money is for larger projects that we're trying to fund through, that fit within the working groups. Is that correct?
No, there are 2, not quite. And in my interpretation, and the differences are extremely important.
Okay.
The first is that the $100K is not for things that are not the priorities. They're small things that are economic development. If they are, in my view, if they are in the 5 priority areas, just small, that's even better than something that's not in the 5 priority areas and small. But we will consider both. So in other words, if you have something that is either small or outside the priority area, this is your chance to get it funded. So it has to be economic and community development. It can't be give me money because I want the money. But it could be give me money to advertise farmers, to have an art show, well, that's an event. In other words, we're not this does not have to, the 100K, the community grants do not have to be in the 5 priority areas.
Okay, I think I'm saying the same thing. So, but but there's smaller grants in nature.
Correct.
And larger grants we're still looking for.
The 5 priority areas. The part that's different about what you said about the larger grants is that they're not limited to, I would say, they should not be limited to the working groups. We have never gotten a larger grant from anyone other than a working group. But if someone came, but I don't think we want to say that if someone came to us with a proposal to increase childcare capacity, or someone came to us with a proposal to build lots of housing, that wasn't part of the working group. I think we would want to judge it on its merits, not.
I'm sorry, the topics of the working group. I didn't mean
Correct.
Through the working groups. I just meant the topics.
I just want to be really precise.
Yep,
So yes, therefore, what you were saying is right.
Understood. And I agree with you that I think it would be great if we got this out sooner than later. Just so that everybody feels they have their opportunity. So if we could get it out this month, I think that would be a great thing if it's possible.
Okay, I'm going to propose a way that it might be possible, because I might be making this too complicated, but let me let Patrick and Michael speak first. Patrick and Michael.
Okay. I'm going to go down the bullet list here. Do we want to request pre-applications? I think the pre-applications help people sort of focus. I know we talked about possibly getting rid of them. I mean, how much was the pre-app different from the app? So I would be okay with just going to an app, especially since we're going to make this less of them because of the 100K. I don't think we should set maximum or minimum grant sizes. I think, if it's a good idea, it might make sense to do it, whether it's big or small. The 100K, I'm cool with that. I think the review process or having people give the presentation was very helpful in my mind. So I think we should keep that. In terms of the 5 priorities, I think, if somebody does a small grant that's in one of our priorities, maybe it has a little bit more pull for us. But, again, I see this 100 grand as weaning people off of what we did last year, and except instead of having $320,000, we're having $100,000. So it's just kind of a way of weaning them off, so we can go to the bigger ideas. The guidance thing, I think until we get the loan fund up, I think what we did last worked, and if we can keep the same, just so we can get this, I see this as a stepping stone to the next level. And the deadline, as soon as we can get it out. I mean, if we can get it out this month, great.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to come back to your answers to that question because they're the same as mine. So, Michael, and then Larry.
Yeah, I just feel like 100,000 is kind of a lot for this, because I thought our focus was to try and spend more money on fewer things, but I feel like we're still trying to hold on to doing the same thing that we have been doing for the past 7 years. And I don't know, I'm thinking this is a big chunk of it. And even though we may not spend it this year, we could allocate it to something that big that comes up next year if it's housing or childcare. But I don't know. I think this is a lot. I don't think we need to provide guidance. I think the hand holding can go do away with, and we can just make it clear in our applications that this is what we're looking for.
Just Michael, were you at the last meeting? I can't remember. We had a long.
No, nobody reminded me there was a meeting, so I missed that one.
All right, sorry. We had a very long discussion about the 100K, and I left it off of this slide. But what we talked about was 100, 70, and 30 over the next 3 years. The idea is moving down to a permanent $30,000 level, which preserves a small program, but really lets us focus, but with a gradual transition. We had a long debate about that. We voted, I think, 6-2 or something to do that path. So if possible, which is philosophically what you're, in the direction you're
Yeah.
describing, it's not quite the same.
So it would be 100,000 this year and 30,000 the next year. That was kind
No,
of,
what we talked about was 100, then 70, and then
Yeah.
30.
okay, 170. Okay, thanks.
100, comma, 70, comma, 30. Larry?
Got it.
You want to talk about that some more?
I don't know. I mean, if Michael's okay with it, I would rather not yet. Larry?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It just with $100,000, are we setting aside $100,000? Or are we saying that that's the maximum that we would give for this kind of grant? And if we have it, if, for instance, some of these major groups came in and wanted, $200,000 for childcare, let's say, and that would impinge on the $100,000. Are we willing? We're willing to do that?
Well, I mean, I think at this point, we're likely to have for calendar 23, we're likely to have about $750,000 available. So I think at least for 2023, I don't think we have to worry about that.
Okay, it's a moot point.
For 2023, it is. I hope for 2024, it isn't.
Okay.
Todd?
Yeah, so yeah, it's funny. I remember the meeting now where we talked about this because that you had I needed the jog of memory. So the only thing I would say is that all I know is last year. So Mike, I don't know about earlier, but last year I thought it was really successful and the people in town were happy. And we know that we have to bring things in another direction, but I think that we still owe it for people to do the hand holding if that's what they want. And honestly, I thought there would be a lot more last year, but there wasn't. So there probably won't be this year either. But I think that just because we're going to move on to bigger, better things in terms of what the town really could benefit from, which I agree with what we're working toward. I just want to caution us to think about, let's not just take our success for granted from last year's grant process. And, just assume everyone's going to be submitting what they need and not needing any handholding. I think that, a lot of the best grants come from people that might not be the most qualified to write them, is what I saw in a lot of ways. So, I'm happy to still lend my time to that. And I'm not saying that anyone's saying otherwise, but I just think that if we cap it at 100,000 this year, like we discussed with the tiered approach, which I think was Patrick's idea before, we still should support it fully with our time and efforts. And also I think we should make it clear to people what we're doing, that we are going to do a tiered approach if that's what we completely fully agree on. And the reason I say that is if there's someone out there, John, that might say, oh, maybe I'll just do it next year. They might want to get the fire under the belly to do it this year, knowing that maybe next year is going to have a smaller total pool. So if we are discussing that transparency, I'd hate someone to say, oh, you didn't tell us that. And we just say, well, you should come to meetings, because we know that doesn't work. So yeah, long story short, the 100K, yes. I agree we shouldn't do the pre-app. It was a waste of time, it turns out, because it wasn't followed the way I envisioned it. And it was Deborah and I's idea. So I think we're both okay with that going away, right, Deb? Yeah, so make it more streamlined. I think it doesn't need any editing. If it needs editing, we can certainly reach out to the programmer, and we should release it soon for sure. Now that I remember the tiered thing and that whole thing in my fog of being sick, I'm there. So
I think, given what you've said, Todd, I think that there's a general consensus on all of these. So let me just say what I think the consensus is, and again, some people haven't made comments on each of them. Get rid of the pre-application. Don't set any maximum grant sizes. Allocate 100,000. We might not spend it, but if there's 100,000 of good grant applications, we will spend up to that point. Repeat the application and the review process. Remind people that we have 5 priority areas, and so that if you can submit, even though there are working groups, you can submit something that's in those areas, and you get a few points for that. I'm going to come back. Don't provide guidance to businesses. I don't want to. It's one specific question, and I want to question that. And the deadline is as soon as possible. As soon as we can get the dates changed, within a week, we'll announce this program. By the way, the applications, the schedule would then be the applications are due. I would say the first week in January, we would have our meeting by the end of January, and get it to the select board in early February for approval. So let's just say, leaving aside, does anyone object to what I've just said, with the exception of the point about the guidance for businesses?
Deb has a question.
Deborah.
Yeah, she's.
One of the things that I'm getting really, really clear on is about when things are not clear in communication and what that does within the community and how it can get distorted. And I just want to say, like, I just think even in us writing this out, the 100K allocation for 2023 community grants, I think even having it written like that without it being clear, 100K for community grants, which means this, and going for larger grants for this amount, which means that, is really important because, again, we're talking about a successful year. And I think people who are just kind of breezing over it are like, well, why is it going to 100K? Where's the rest of the money going? Why is the rest of the money going to the EDC? All of those kind of things will come up if it's not clear that, no, we're spending all this money on, community development, and we're allocating it in two different ways. I just think that information needs to go together.
Yeah. So let's break this up into what we want to do and how we communicate and the process we use to communicate it effectively. So I'm going to come back in 1 minute, Deborah, to your point, which I think is extremely important. Any disagreement about what it is we want to do. And you know what, in the interest of time, I think I'm going to not object for the moment to the guidance about businesses. I want to come back to that at some point where we have more time, maybe offline or something. Let's talk about Deborah's point about how we communicate this. I think it's a very good point. I think if we want to start this next week, we don't have time to vet that fully. I think we should. I don't think we have to wait a month. And so I have two suggestions to address what Deborah said. One is that we get to work on an announcement and that we work on that, via email, basically. And perhaps if we need to call, I think we can figure out a way to make the email exchange public so that we can actually hold a meeting via email, and it's a public meeting that we can warn. I'd like to try that. But that we work over the net and that we shoot to publish this, at the no later than the end of October, because the second thing I would like to do is to take this to the select board with exactly the explanation you talked about, just at a high level, not every one of these points, but just the basic notion that we go back to this and we show the select board, which we said we were going to do. We said, look, we've worked for the last 6 months. This is the picture, particularly on the left-hand side. Those are the 5 things that we think for this years, those are our priorities. And we've heard loud and clear from the community, and we strongly agree that we need to focus on big things. And those are the 5, and we're looking for big grants in those 5 areas so we can move the needle. Therefore, here's how we would like to design the community grant process, and just basically say 100K, it'll probably get smaller over the next few years. And the rest of the money would go towards big grants from community members or the EDC working group in these 5 priority areas, and get in a public meeting, get the select board to buy off on that. That plus a communication to the public announcing this community grant program, just in the way you described, Deborah, that includes that explanation.
And I think it's just the languaging that the things on the left, we're open for those ideas and those large grants coming from community.
Which is why I was trying to correct you. It turns out we were saying the same thing. Exactly.
Right.
It's the areas that we're focused on. And we have put teams to build big proposals on those 5 areas. If anyone else wants to put a team towards that, fantastic.
And that's where the money is going. Yep.
Okay, so are people, I think, to me, accepting a delay in the announcement of the community grant program is worth it in order to avoid real communication problems and so.
I want to say, John, I actually am not saying necessary. I mean, if I'm saying a delay, I'm saying a delay like within a week for us to just get the language right.
It might only be a week. Yeah, a week.
Less than 3 days. Like, let's here are some ideas. Is everybody good? Kosher? Great, let's go.
Well, no. Hold on. I want to add into that. also reviewing it with the select board. I think there's a
Yeah.
chance that we will get some really, some serious pushback, some questioning, and why was this decision made at a meeting that no one attended and blah, blah, blah. And I think if we said, look, we talked about it publicly, we then went to the select board and talked about it publicly, and the select board agreed, this is how, then I think we're in a much stronger position. So it might be a 2-week delay. The select board meets every 2 weeks, and I can get us on the agenda for the next meeting, assuming we have. So we're talking about a few weeks delay. We're not talking about a significant delay. It might mean it might mean that we give the grants out in the first week in February instead of the January 20th. I don't think it makes a huge difference. That's my opinion, unless someone disagrees.
So are
Okay.
you suggesting that a couple of folks volunteer to author an appropriate announcement?
Absolutely. Deborah, would you like to work on that, on the communication of this?
Sure.
I'm happy to help.
Work with me? Okay, well, we do that,
No,
Rob.
yeah, I think what we would do though, I'll talk to you about the process because we have to.
You
comply
double
with the
work,
open
yeah,
meeting-
we'll work it
comply with
out.
The open meeting law. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Deborah, you'd be a great job doing that,
Yeah.
and then let John edit it.
Oh, no, yeah, well, I think all of us will get a chance to look at it. Okay, all right, so I think we have agreed on what we want to do. We agree that we want to communicate it with the process we described, and I think we will then end up launching this program of community grants before our next meeting.
Right,
So,
so let it be done.
all right. Lastly, just when we're sort of going to run out of time here. Well, it's getting late because we started the meeting at 6:30. We don't have to decide this tonight, the process for handling larger grants in the priority areas.
Yeah.
But here are questions, and maybe we make this homework. I think it's fine to make this homework. Here are 4 questions that I think we should answer at our next meeting. We have talked about a rolling proposal process, basically to put pressure on the working groups and on the community, anyone who wants to sort of quickly develop big proposals. So I think we need to just confirm that. It is a pretty important change. There's pros and cons to having the community grant process, at one time. It's why we shifted to it. We used to do much more of a rolling process. So just think about this. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I do think I should not have put the second question in. It seems like everyone agrees with Deborah's point, and particularly in light of the discussion we just had, we have to open it up to the community. Should we define specific criteria for those large grants? Should we establish a minimum grant size? Larry and Todd, again, I'm happy to postpone this discussion to the next meeting because I think we can focus on community grants for the next few weeks and take this up then. But if you feel free to comment, for Larry first, then Todd.
I suspect Todd may have the same comment. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I just think that we've already discussed the direction we're going. And I think that, time is of the essence of many things, and we shouldn't put ourselves in a position where we overregulate ourselves and have to change policy that we made. I say that we suggest that when grants are ready, they come in. And if we feel like it's not a good fit, then we make policies around that reality, as opposed to trying to overregulate ourselves on the front end when it may not be necessary. Again, something happens tomorrow the community didn't anticipate. It's a great opportunity for grants, and they come to us next week and have the best grant ever written in the history of the universe. But we have some policy we made that, well, we're going to talk about that in June. So I just think that in this new change, we should consider being a little open unless there's something that proves too onerous or perhaps makes people uncomfortable. I'm not saying to fly by the seat of the pants. I'm just saying that I'd try to stay away from making rules until we have an understanding of what those rules should actually be framed around.
For the 5 priority areas. If
Right,
someone-
exactly.
Okay, Larry.
Yeah, well, I just to add a little to that, Todd, I don't know if you're going to say anything about this, but I feel like
Yeah.
we've got 4 fairly significant sized grants that could come up very soon in the childcare area, and we wouldn't want to encourage those grants if we don't have a rolling proposal process. I think it would be really too bad to not
Yeah.
have that as our process.
Patrick.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think if we're gonna do big grants, they, they may not come in on our schedule. So I think we need to make sure we keep that out there so that, somebody comes up with something great and it's in March or June, we look at it. Because again, as long as it's in those priorities.
I've just edited the document. Does everyone agree with my edits?
Yes.
Any objections? Okay, thank you for your feedback. Brutal group. Okay. We end with good. I think that's great. And I think we're going to learn a little bit more about what Larry and Todd are talking about here in terms of the grants. So we've talked about the rental incentives. Let's come back to working group updates. I know Stuart Matthews is on, and so let's start with downtown revitalization, and then we can go to, we've done housing already, we can go to childcare, and then we'll see if there's anything else. So Stuart is chairing the downtown physical revitalization. There you are. Welcome,
Thanks,
Stuart.
John. So our committee is tasked with developing a list of potential commercial projects that would take place in the downtown area that will improve the economic vitality of the community. We've got our committee is myself, Joe DiNatale, Jack Rossi, Meredith Christensen, Ben Jervy, Zoe Zillian, and Scott Smith. We have defined the geographic area that we're focusing on basically as being from Woodstock, Hops and Barley to the rec center, and from Vale Fields to the Billings Farm intersection. So it's the vast majority of the downtown area. And what I wanted to do tonight was just walk through the approach we're using and let you know, give you a chance to respond to that. And I wasn't planning on getting into specifics on projects that we're looking at, but I can if you guys would like me to. The first thing we're doing is developing a list of potential projects to work on. We're looking at two categories of projects, those that involve public assets. And what I mean by that is are really focused on infrastructure and or property that is publicly owned as opposed to working on property that is privately owned. In either case, we are looking at projects or investments that we think have a significant opportunity to have a positive impact on the economic vitality in Woodstock and in Woodstock. So we created a hit list of about 15 different projects that fall into those two categories. We sort of are working now through them. We're force ranking them and identifying the major obstacles to each and our sense of the impact of each. So what we're trying to do is focus on projects that we think have the maximum impact, potential impact, and at the same time, those that we think we have the highest likelihood of being successful with. Once we've done that, our intention is to come to the EDC and present that list to you for your evaluation and consideration. And you can decide if you want us to move forward with any particular projects or not, or if you tell us to go in a different direction, we can do that. That's where we stand. That's what we're doing, and I'm happy to chat and give any detail that's desired.
Stuart, when you come,
I have one quick question.
Patrick, go ahead.
I know one of my struggles is something that should be handled by the town versus by the EDC. And are you weighing that into any of your projects that you're thinking about?
We are, and right now, I don't think any of the projects that we're looking at are projects. There's maybe one, but really the projects we're looking at are not projects that would typically be undertaken by a municipality. So we're not suggesting, for example, let's resurface the roads.
Right.
We think that's a municipal responsibility, but we may have projects that involve public space. So that's the distinction that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Larry, your hand is still up. I think it's just remaining up from before, right? Yeah, okay. Any other, Stuart, so when you come back to us, are you gonna come back, I'm not suggesting one way or the other, but are you gonna come back to us with the list and get sort of broad feedback from us, or are you gonna develop each proposal and say, if we were to do number one, it would be $125,000, and here's what we would get from it, and we think that's the best investment. The second best is, will you come back to us with actual funding requests in effect, you'll have developed it that far, or is there some step before that that we will get to see that? I don't care the answer. I just want to
You
know.
know, I think I guess I would say you guys should give me some guidance. What my plan is at this point, our plan, excuse me, is to take the long list. So we start with the 15, we work down to 7. I'd like to prioritize that down to 3. And you know, each are going to have pros and cons, and we can try to do some rough budgets. But I think at that point we would want some guidance as to what direction the EDC felt was most appropriate, and then we could develop that further.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Just what you described. Once you've got the priorities, even though maybe order of magnitude dollars, but not something that we would grant money to, but something that we would say, yeah, that really looks like it's worth a lot of money.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is everyone
And
okay
then
with that?
also, you know, at that point, if none of them, if you don't think any of them hit your target, I can show you the, you know, the other ones and, you know, the stuff that didn't make our list, and you might tell us that you think those, you know,
Or more
should be a
important?
higher priority, and we can focus on those.
Right, okay. All right, are there everyone comfortable with that
And I
process?
don't know if Joe wants to add anything. Joe is a committee member, and I know he's on the EDC, and I think he's on the call still. So
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I think the only thing I would add to is probably a clarification about the categories, one public and the other one private. Instead of private, I would use the word commercial. Stuart and I talked.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point. And Joe's point is we're not, when we think about the downtown, there's commercial buildings and there's residential buildings. We are not thinking of focusing on residential buildings. We are really looking at commercial areas as opposed to residential things.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Other questions or comments? There's something in the chat. Sorry, I wasn't paying it. Okay. All right, any other comments? All right, Stuart, Joe, that's great. Thank you for that. Was sorry, is there a time frame, like, or not a deadline, but what would you expect? When would you expect to come back to us?
When do you guys meet monthly?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can probably, Joe, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we can probably have a list to present to you next month.
Yes, definitely.
That'd be great. That's
Definitely.
fantastic. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, childcare. This is a big one.
Yeah. I'm trying to make this brief, and if nothing makes sense, just interrupt me. So I'm unwell. There's good things happening in town. Just to give the recap, there's 27 families that have a child birth up to 3 years old that do not have care, 6 of which are moving because of this issue that responded to our survey. There is an after-school crisis, which we didn't know until we went out to the town and started this conversation with folks, where people have to leave work early to try to pick up the children because the aftercare doesn't exist like it did last year at Wes and other places. There is a summer crisis where when the kids are out of school, parents have, again, a work issue where they have no one to watch their child because summer program isn't available. We've had at least a dozen discussions with folks about one person leaving the workforce in our survey. So that's a little bit of color on the calamity that we're facing. So what happened, to recap what happened, we reached out. We heard a lot of the same things. We heard, that it's housing, it's wages, it's personnel in general. It's all these things. And those are all part of the same pancake batter, which is what we found is we need to go. We're not experts. Joe talked about that a lot. He wanted to make it clear that everyone knows that we know nothing about this. Larry and I, Joe, Mika, we're just here for information gathering. What did we find? We met with all the area providers, every single one of them, Rainbow, WCCC, Woodstock Nursery. We met with the superintendent of the union, Sherry Souza. We met with Maggie Mills, principal of Wes. We met with the community campus and Bridgewater Daycare, and we've been consulting on occasion with Let's Grow Kids and Brenda, who's been a tremendous asset and information for us. And just to recap on that, LGK, as they're known, is a policy-driven organization that's working on longer-term solutions. We are working on the solution for today and tomorrow. We anticipate several, using Larry's words because they're perfect, we anticipate several exciting proposals in the near future. Those proposals will include after school fixing and summer program fixing. And what I mean by that is we've identified a problem. We're providing potential solutions for those problems through these grant proposals in a meaningful way. We have the biggest need again in the 6-week, I call it birth, but there's some debate there. I think, maybe 3 days after they don't want the kid going in, but 6-week to 3-year-old, again, those 27 families in need with Rainbow is going to be able to, hopefully through their proposal, immediately start to satisfy some of that need with a meaningful and sustaining proposition. It's basically looking at us bridging a gap for them to provide wages, health, benefit, welfare for their employees and their new employees. And that brings me to the after school. The district has been unable to fill the positions, and due to their union work issues, they're not able to take monies from outside parties and just dole it out to the 2 positions that handle West for the after school kids. So WCCC is working incredibly hard, Ruth over there, to work with the leadership in that space and all the things necessary to increase capacity, including having met with fire, life safety, town, regional governance, people who say that it's okay to bring more children in these spaces. We have looked at the major need and realized that it still wouldn't be enough at Rainbow, and we didn't know what to do. And out of that, Larry and John also has done some great work reaching out with the Bridgewater daycare. It's something we wanted to talk about with the commission as a whole to see if we can get to be at a comfortable level. Why do we want to have this conversation? Well, there are people in Woodstock whose needs aren't currently being met, even if we go and get successful awarded grants to places like Rainbow and TCC for these groups. And it turns out that Woodstock daycare is just over the border, and they have 14 slots now, and 13 of them are currently filled by folks who are residents of Woodstock. They have a new fantastic facility, and they're very willing and open to work with us on providing what they hope could be a successful grant proposal to meaningfully impact the Woodstock families that still have a need. I decided to say, well, why would we send our money in Bridgewater? It's across the street, it's this. And I think John made a great point early on. Well, we're not going to pave Bridgewater's roads if Woodstock people are driving on it more than Bridgewater folks. But I think that I equated this to this is a infrastructure that's broken, the school infrastructure, the infrastructure of employment coming out of COVID specifically, and with things that we've heard about in this commission of retirees leaving the workforce and not enough people being born and coming in at this time of their lives to take these jobs. So I say that we think about it as the electric company that Woodstock uses is located in Bridgewater. It services a few places, Bridgewater, Hartford, wherever, and it's broken. It needs repair. I think that it would be an easy thing for the folks to understand in Woodstock that we might need to provide some capital improvements for the infrastructure of that power plant to satisfy our community, even though it might not be located there. So when I see the 13 out of 14 families being served currently by Woodstock with Woodstock residents at Bridgewater daycare, it might as well be called the Woodstock daycare. So they have made some real inroads with Larry and John, like I said, and the summary of that is that they have immediate room for capacity. They need some funding opportunities. There's been discussion on how would that look if we gave X amount of dollars from Woodstock. What's to stop a Reading family from putting their children in there, this and that? Well, nothing, but they had a great idea to contemplate. And again, what we're looking for is to have the commission give a nod if it's okay to pursue these further conversations. What they're saying is perhaps it's as simple as if we gave a portion of X that they need to raise to solve these issues with their staffing, that portion could directly correlate to a minimum number of the amount of Woodstock people that would be coming through. So for example, $100,000, if we gave them 60% of the new people would be able to come from Woodstock. That's a great first idea. It could be the best idea. I'm not sure. But that's the basic update. We have a big problem. We're helping to solve the problem. And what we found is that once we finally got in touch with these providers, and it was a lot of work. And, I was frankly irritated with all of them. That's just the truth, that they don't call you back. That they're just, their email's wrong. They're this, that. It turns out they're just busy taking care of our children. and they don't have time all day, and they're tired, and they have their own families, and they're working incredibly hard for small amounts of money and no benefits. So these are first responders. These are people that I hope we can look at, whether they're just across the way in Bridgewater or not. And I'm looking for support from the commission. It's not something I don't think that needs to be voted on, but I leave it to the chair. But I'm looking for support to continue these discussions and be able to work with them so that they can provide a proposal, a meaningful proposal to help the families in Woodstock in need. Thank you.
Make a motion.
Go ahead, Larry. Joe, sorry.
God, I think all of that is amazing. I think it's all great. I mean, and so incredibly beneficial to the town. I mean, as a business owner here in town, we have lost a couple of very good employees because of daycare issue. So I applaud you and your group. I think you're doing a great job. And if you require a vote now to support this effort as much as we possibly can, I make that motion.
All right, well, let's
Thanks,
just
Joe.
accept the motion,
Yeah.
because it's a general vague motion.
Yeah.
Is there a second to the motion? Then we'll discuss it. I'll second it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, is the chair allowed to second the motion? Does anyone know?
Sure.
I seconded it. I seconded it.
Patrick seconded. Okay, fine. Discussion. Just a couple points. I think,
John, before you do that, can I just make one point too?
sure, go ahead, Patrick, and then me.
Along with Todd's thing about spending money on Bridgewater, it ties right into the grants manager and being able to let the grants manager work with Todd's group to help find funding for the Bridgewater thing. So they two tie together, and I think we should because as we've all pointed out, the facility is heavily Woodstock people. So I'd like to tie that together with this. With this.
So I think I don't think we need a motion, although I didn't, I don't think
we do.
Yeah, but just to be clear, when we talk about giving money to Bridgewater, I think this is really important. The organization that we're dealing with is a private organization. It gets no funding from Bridgewater. the town.
Nonprofit.
It's a not-for-profit. It gets no funding. It just happens to be located about, I don't know, 700 yards in the wrong direction, so to speak, in the bad PR direction. This this can't be called anything other than a Woodstock childcare program. And they are prepared, well, the executive director is prepared, I think, to recommend to her board that if we provide 100% of the funding they need for this expansion capacity, to guarantee that Woodstock will have first shot at 100% of the capacity. And I think it's important to notice that for both, I believe this is true, Todd, I haven't seen some of the other proposals, but that for, Larry, you can confirm this, I think that for both the 0 to 3 age group expansion that they're thinking of and the after school program expansion they're thinking of are the largest by quite a bit of any expansion proposal that we have.
Right.
So we would be, to put it simply, we would be nuts if we like the grant and we think that there's a need, which I think we've established that we would be nuts not to do this. It's a very, does anyone have an objection to if we like the grant, if the grant proposal is appropriate as compared to the others, we may fund all of them. That does anyone have a philosophical objection to giving money to an organization that is serving the Woodstock community but is based a bit over the property line?
I'd like to interject one thing, is the proposal as was suggested, that if we were to support them 100%, that Woodstock residents would get first shot at any vacancies or openings, that include people who possibly live in Bridgewater, but are employed or could be employed in Woodstock, in addition to Woodstock residents.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
yes,
Todd?
okay, fine. So why don't we let the working
'Cause
group,
the two that we lost lived in Bridgewater.
right, let's let the work, right, so, okay, that's very interesting. Let's let the working group factor that into all of the
Yeah,
grant applications
yes.
and come to us with proposals
Yes.
that they think meet the objectives. Let's not set a rule for or against what you
Yeah.
said. I happen to agree with it.
Yeah.
So Todd, you and Larry and the group will have to consider what it means to be supporting Woodstock. Is there anyone who objects to them and the grant manager supporting the grants for any of those, for that program in particular, all the others fit into Woodstock? Anyone opposed to that? No, okay,
Hearing
great.
none.
So I think we, yeah. Can I just ask one quick question, Todd, of the
Larry's got
group?
his hand up.
Larry, is your hand up or is it still up from? Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, it is up. I was just going to interject that just so that heads up. We're expecting 3 and probably 4 grant applications very soon.
Yeah.
Just to let you know that.
And actually that was, my question was to elicit from you 2 things about those applications. You've answered the timing thing. I have 2 other points. Could you give us a sense, adding up all of the, because I want everyone to understand the magnitude of what you have accomplished in a short period of time, not that we've approved these grants yet, but can you tell us the total number of places in whatever, whether it's after school or any, don't worry about the segments, total number of places that these programs in the next 12 months would likely accomplish, and B, the total funding, which in every case, I believe is one-time funding, the total funding that would be needed, roughly speaking, to achieve those number of spaces, just order of magnitude.
I mean, I can just tell you right now that we be servicing it in the folks we've talked to that we anticipate to receive grants from, well north of 50, 60 children right away. I mean, it could even be as high as 70. We have to break that down, and just holistically, we're talking about the plus 22 potential in Bridgewater, talking about 20 at Rainbow, we're talking about 20 at TCC, and we're talking about potentially as many as 20 to 30 at WCCC, and then the after school program that doesn't exist now, that would go with TCC and WCCC. That goes for kids that are even older, to 12 years old, I think. So we're literally talking about many, many dozens of children and many, many dozens of families that will have relief.
That's awesome.
And the total funding that would be required, the ones that I'm familiar with, are all one-time funding that lead to a sustainable business model. What's the total of the one-time funding? I think it's maybe, I would guess it would be an order of magnitude of 200 or 225.
Yeah, I would estimate about 250. That's right. And what we looked for, because we have a chair that's really fiscally minded, we look for people to go and tell us and find out. And we encourage this in their proposals of how this isn't just something that they're going to come up with next year, and really lay out their case of how this can transform their business of childcare and their labor force that serves it. So it really is, we're waiting to see them, right? But these conversations have been very, very deliberate, and it's just exciting stuff, John.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Jill.
So you've talked about giving grants for 250,000 and then 100,000 for the community. That's 350,000. How much are you anticipating for next year?
We're anticipating, this for 2022, the current year, we're forecasting revenue of about 355,000.
So if the housing group comes up with 100,000, how are you going to fund all these projects?
We have a reserve fund of previously unallocated funds of about 450,000.
I see. Okay.
And the 350,000 is up 19% from the year before. We only, of the 350 from this year, we only granted 300, thinking that we were only going to have 300. So our reserves are actually going up.
Okay. Thank you.
And we're, so yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Jill, because we want children to have places to live too.
I do just one comment, Todd, that I know the working group, I don't want you to get caught by surprise by this, but the after school program at Bridgewater, Larry, remind me, was 30 plus people.
30,
Oh, wow.
32, 33.
Yeah, and they have a huge facility there. It's like a basketball court. So,
Unbelievable.
but it's fantastic. And I'm not suggesting that if we have 27 families, that we should create 27 spaces, not 28. But I think if you add up all of those numbers, you're talking about 100 or 125 spaces. And
It's crazy.
And I think we want to have extra capacity, but I do think you need to basically talk about demand in proportion to the supply when all these grants come in, so that we make sure that we overdo it, but that we don't overdo it.
I mean, John, to that point, I mean, I might get emotional because I've had so many families reach out to me about this, and you know, it's just so hard for them. But I mean, there are people who aren't moving here because of this problem. People will move here. The economy is directly related to these folks performing their jobs and duties and spending their money in and around the area of Woodstock, and they can't do it. They call, they find out their friend lives here. We love it. It's beautiful. Come up for leaf peeping and all this. And they say, well, we'd love to move here, but it's impossible because there's no childcare. We have to go and do the best we can to fix the highest proportion of the problem, even the proportion that might not immediately exist.
It's fine. That what you just did addresses the problem in the context of supply and demand. It just reframes what demand is, which all I'm saying is you need to address the relationship between demand and supply. And if
Absolutely.
the answer is what you've just said,
No.
Fantastic. We just need to be able to tell the public, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
I understand. It'd be good. You know what? Maybe we can go and I could maybe get a testimonial or two from some folks. I think that carries a lot of weight.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So we've seen 3 working groups. Marketing, Patrick, do you want to talk at all about marketing?
Yeah, just briefly. Well, let me just talk to grants manager first. I'm happy that we all agree that the grants manager that she can work with Todd's group for the Bridgewater thing, because that was something that I thought made sense. Allison Caffrey, we had a meeting with Allison Clarkson and Charlie Kimball, which was a fantastic meeting. There's a lot of money in the state right now. So Allison's going to work very closely with the 2 of them to figure out what money is there and who it can be for. In the listserv, we're posting different grants that we're finding. We've got forms on the website. So Allison has found a lot of stuff, and right now it's getting the word out. So if you guys know of anybody or spread the word to go to the website and put their information in, Allison will get back to them quickly. We're looking to find some quick wins, and it sounds to me like the housing or the childcare could be a win. So please be aware that that's there and spread the word that people can look. The other thing is marketing. We're moving forward with the new fall campaign as part of the program, collecting more information and building the database and remarketing to people. And we're in a good spot right now. I'm going to put together a whole new report that it'll come in next month. That'll show everything that's going on. But just to give you an idea, some of the numbers that we're seeing, we're increasing traffic to the website by anywhere from 25 to 35% from over last year. And last year was a crazy year in terms of the number of people coming. So what we're doing is working really well, and we're just perfecting it and getting it situated so that we have it as a full year program. That when it comes time to change things, we're just changing its content slightly. So everything is working really well right now, and we're in the process of putting together a bigger proposal for a 2-3 year plan that'll take this program and build it even stronger. So keep your eyes open in the next few months for that.
Okay. Deborah, sorry, your hand is raised. Go ahead.
This was just an update I wanted to give on TED once we were done with marketing.
Oh, okay, perfect. I just want to say, any questions about any of the updates so far? I didn't really give people a chance. Okay, I actually if I can just introduce, Deborah, not what you're about to say, but the 5th working group is events. We have funded, one very important event, but Michael and Deborah, I think I'd like to get the events working group beyond just the grants we made last year. And I mean, I've talked to, both of you about this, but I don't know if you have anything to report more broadly, but obviously the event that we funded has taken place. I thought it was fantastic. So Deborah, do you want to give a quick update?
Yeah, I just wanted, first of all, to thank everybody who has either sent me notes in support or actually showed up, or also for my title sponsors, which were EDC and Mad Nut and Billings, Mad Old Nut, which was incredibly helpful. It was
I think I'm getting good feedback, and it was, sold out as far as the room was concerned, but we had an overflow room that we could have handled so much more capacity. And what I'm hearing is that people were like, oh, I didn't quite understand what it was, or I didn't know, or it was a very interesting kind of response that we've gotten since. I've also, I was really pleased with the conversations that have come up since, and want people to know that we're immediately working towards having quarterly salons, which will be an evening program, which will have 3 speakers and a moderator and open dialogue about some of the issues that we talk about through the EDC and otherwise. And I really, now that people have seen what's possible, I really, really would like to get more community involvement. I had one person, say there wasn't enough Vermonters, and I think, but it was somebody who didn't actually come to the event. And, we had 7 people from Vermont and 3 other people from New England and only 4 people from a broader area. And I think that that's about the right ratio for this event. I think it's important to bring in voices from beyond to add to the mix, as well as to showcase people from Vermont. And I really want to get more community involvement. So on October 27th, and I hope you guys can save the date, we're looking to do an event. This is still in the works. We'll know in the next 2 days, with Vermont Distillery, where, it's Thursday night before Thanksgiving. So it'll be a big party for adults prior to spending the weekend with their kids. And I have some musical guests that we're trying to solidify, but the idea is that it would start with a conversation.
Said October, it must be November.
What?
Did you said October 27th? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I did say October. Did I say something different?
Was that the
No,
night?
you said right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, right
Thanksgiving
before
early?
Halloween, right before Halloween. Sorry.
There you go, okay.
Yeah, right before the Halloween weekend. But the idea is that we start off with hey, tell me who I should meet. Tell me the stories that you want to hear. Tell me, and really get people's opinions and get people involved, and even develop a committee around next year's ideas. And I'm open to hearing what anybody else wants to suggest about it too. But I think it was a good beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was very interesting. I was surprised at some of the things that I was, some of the topics that when I looked at the agenda, that I thought, oh, I would skip that one, but I was there and it just went one after the other. And it turned out to be, all of those ones that I would have skipped turned out to be very interesting, which I think is something about TED that it's not logical, but it happens. So it's pretty interesting. All right. Any other comments to Deborah or anything else? All right. No. Okay. All right. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Thanks. Oh, sorry. I just want to make one last thing. I made this comment last month, but it's even more true this month, and I think it will continue. If it stays at this level, I think it'll be fantastic. The productivity that we get and the focus that we get on the things that we wanted to be focused on is so evident now, coming out of the working groups and the initiatives, whether it's an initiative of a grant writer or the working groups and so forth. And I just think it's really, really powerful. We just have to stay this course. And, I just want to particularly call out housing and childcare this month for really, really, starting to have or getting ready to have a real impact in what's happening. Todd,
A
you
lot
raising
of
your
good
hand?
work, a lot of great work, those crews.
Todd, go ahead.
On the school board, I've done this before, and Larry's gonna get mad. Sorry. On the school board, we have time to reflect at the end amongst the group, and I just again want to reflect on how much I appreciate Larry and John for working with me on this childcare thing. Everyone's so busy, and John's in a million directions, and Larry literally emails me 500 things a day and saying, "Get this done, do this, do that." I'm like, "You only can call me, Larry. Stop emailing me." And he calls me all the time. And I'm just so grateful for you, Larry. And I just want to say,
I know the
in front of
feeling.
everyone, even though you asked me not to say it out loud, I'm saying it out loud, Larry. I really appreciate you, man. And you're the best. Thank you, Larry.
That's great. That's very nice. All right. Anything else?
No,
Anybody?
adjourn.
All right, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Yes.
adjourn.
Joe's got it. Is there a second?
Second.
No, Michael had his hands up, a nonverbal second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it's 8:12. We are adjourned.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Nikki, I will send you a copy of the video if you need it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody. Take care.